to get you rapid results on your health journey so you can be who you came here to be, mind, body, and spirit. I'm your host, Sinclair Keneally, survivor of complex chronic illness, expert on resolving root causes, and co-founder of Detox Rejuvenation and Meditation RX. Let's get started.
Welcome back. We're today with Dr. Roseanne Campana-Hodge, a dear friend and colleague of mine, and she is the founder of the Global Institute for Children's Mental Health. Welcome, Dr. Roseanne. It's so great to have you here with us.
I am so grateful for this conversation. First of all, I'm excited. Whenever you and I get together, we percolate, and we both support and care for the same population of people who are stuck and struggling. So I know these conversations change lives, so I'm really excited to have it with you.
Me too. And you and I both, we set the intention before we did this interview that we're going to make sure that we're unpacking really crucial concepts today for both the parent that knows exactly what their kid's been diagnosed with, 1, 2, 3, 4 plus diagnoses, as well as the parent who's still searching for answers for their child and trying to wrap their hands around the problem. So I'm really excited to do this with you. Okay, so I would love for you to first share with us your specialty and why you're so passionate about it so people understand where you're coming from.
Yes. I really am a child mental health expert and who's been using integrative mental health techniques for 30 years. I have only used science-backed solutions. So that means that I was using holistic techniques because that's what the science points us to. But, really my specialty is working with people who have been struggling, who have been stuck, who are going down rabbit holes looking for answers and Googling at 2 a.m. We actually get the majority of our contacts at 2 and 3 a.m. because it's usually a mom who is the CEO of the family healthcare who is, wait a second, my kid's got AD diagnosis, bipolar, this, that, the other thing, maybe has PANS, maybe has infectious disease, maybe, like you said, they have no idea. And we are making mental health just unbelievably complex when it should be much more simplistic. The science is there. We know what works. And what I do is I take what is already proven in science and I put it together in our brain behavior reset program. And it is the right techniques in the right order at the right time. And that's what's different about what I do. And I really just take a very caring and common sense approach. And, when parents find me, they think to themselves, why aren't people talking about, brain-based solution, PEMF, neurofeedback, and other techniques and remedies like detoxification and different types of therapy. So I cultivate what we know to work and help people with some of the most common issues, but also very layered and complex issues like PANS and PANDAS, and OCD in particular. I would say those are some of the more layered. And usually when somebody gets depression, typically a mood disorder doesn't start as a mood disorder. It usually starts as something else, anxiety, ADD, some other clinical diagnosis, and that's the end result. But my specialty is a common sense approach with lots of science and very results oriented. When people come and work with me, we're getting serious. Like, you don't come to Dr. Rowe unless you want to be done with your OCD or your PANS, PANDAS, and you're ready for change.
That's so wonderful. I think we get really stuck in the illusion of small wins. Like, let's just keep our heads above water and how can we maintain? But it really means you and your family are treading water and you're losing these windows of opportunity with these kids where they're in the home still. You can actually control the environment and support them before they start taking on these really unfortunate issues as a lifelong sentence.
And, that's such a great point, Sinclair, because, we do tread water in life, right? We're also chronically stress activated. So when our kid is not in a crisis, but they're not doing great, we're like, things aren't bad. We're going to just keep it status quo. But that's when you dig. You and I are always getting people in crisis. And wherever you are, and when you seek treatment is the right time, okay? But when you can be in a place where you're not great, but it's not full crisis, you're able to take action better. You're able to think through things, and the treatments, because of the way your nervous system is not as activated, can work better because you're just able to put more effort around it. So just because you are treading water and you're not drowning does not mean your treatment is right. And that's what I see a lot with kids. We slap on all these medications. The school isn't calling every day, so it's not so bad, and these are real conversations that I have with people. So dig in and don't accept mediocre for mental health or physical health. Don't accept it. I really, I get a lot of people who are over the crisis and maybe at 70 or 80% or even 90% who say, Dr. Rowe, I want to get to that next level. And I'm like, let's do it. Let's use what we know about the brain and the nervous system to support you and to optimize your life.
That's so fantastic. I couldn't agree more. So let's talk about the root causes that you see underlying so much of these neuroinflammatory conditions for kids today, like these common threads.
Yeah. In terms of neuroinflammation, let's even unpack that. So we're in a place where 1 out of every 150 to 200 kids in America have mental health issues, cognitive issues that result from infectious disease, toxins like molds or other things. There's so many toxins in the world. And infectious disease is big, you guys. It's not just tick-borne. It can be Epstein-Barr. It can be COVID. It can be flu-induced. There are no limits because of what is happening in our society and people having a hard time detoxifying. So we have brain inflammation. And in Sinclair, I do something called a QEEG brain map, and I'm able to actually scan the brain and see what's happening over the structures and the brain communication. It's really pretty awesome. I could talk to you just a half an hour on that. But what I can see is brain inflammation. And I actually see more brain inflammation in kids in general than I do for adults. And kids are being born with over 267 toxins in their body. Through research, we know that. And so they're starting out not as well as we think. Okay. And so today there is a link. We know through research, we know through even mortality studies that brain inflammation is linked to mental health, anxiety, depression, OCD, and a host of other things. So it's on the rise, and inflammation can also come from compounded stress. So what are the top things that I see really holding people back from even getting better? For sure, stress activation, being in a red state. It's very easy to have happen. Nobody ever thinks their kids are stressed out. You think you're living in a really nice house. You think you're sending your kid to a good school. You think you're happily married or maybe have 2 homes that are lovely, whatever it is. But stress is all around us. And even your kids today, they're surviving the pandemic. People are very anxious. They're around other anxious kids who maybe aren't getting the same kind of TLC as your kids are, where stress is an accepted norm in the American culture, and even across the globe, it's becoming similar to the US, sadly. So stress, compounded stressors, and not countering it and not purposely countering it every day, we can talk about that, is a big one. Improper detoxification, and really probably the biggest thing that I see people struggling getting better from mental health, physical issues, is the lack of belief and hope and seeing themselves getting better.
Wow, you really hit the nail on the head there. Can you unpack that a little bit more?
Yes. When we're talking to parents, and I'm a mom, and I'm a mom of 2 kids with special needs, 1 kid with PANS from Lyme disease, and then, of course, all the other stuff came to the party, and my other guy who is dyslexic, who forget about his dyslexia. He's done with that. But when you have a kid, we worry. We worry a lot. I talk to moms all the time. They're like, nobody told you to worry so much. And, even just from the moment you give birth, it's a miracle. Like when your kid comes out and there's no problem, it is a miracle. And so when our kids are struggling, you see they're anxious, you see that they're OCD and they have to rely on you for rituals and they have excessive questioning all the time, and you become their life preserver. It is very hard. And so our mental health system is dictated by, pharma. And so our diagnostic and statistical manual, it's really very heavily, that's how we diagnose. How disorders are picked in is very much set up with how long a condition happens, and then they can be prescribed something. And so physicians today are taught psychopharmacology. They are not taught counseling. They are not taught mental health strategies. They are taught to give a pill, and we are under a belief that it's a biochemical issue. And I'm not saying neurotransmitters aren't a factor here, but genetics don't define you, and it's way more likely to be stress. Hello? And that's just good marketing. So great parents are like, I'm going to do what my doctor said. They go down a rabbit hole of medication. They're typically not offered any kind of therapy, and even regular therapy, depending on the quality of the person you're going to. If they're not a specialist, they're not going to walk you down where you need to go. If you're going to a generalist and your kid's got OCD, let me tell you, it's going to be a decade where they get better. I see it every day. So making sure that when you're going down this path, what happens is it's a lot of side effects, not getting better, a lot of awful experiences, crises. This is typically the standard. And so it's not until that happens that a person says, wait a second, watch the summit. Let me Google. Let me ask my friend Betty, whose kid had EDD but didn't show any symptoms, and let me figure out why. And in that, we're afraid. We're afraid to make a different, choice for ourselves. We also believe that there's something that's quick, right? And I always say, didn't happen overnight. It's not going to get fixed overnight. It's why I have a little magic wand on my desk so that I can always pull it out. And we have to make changes, small changes that build over time, but very intentful and purposeful. And the first part is believing and seeing the success, seeing yourself at the top of the summit, but also acknowledging that you have to go to each base camp. You can't just fly to the summit. There's not a pill. And even if a pill helped you, what about the behavioral changes, right? So somebody's anxious. And so they're, you have a kid who's, no, it's just not going to happen. I'm not going to get first place. No, I'm not going to get an A. And why should I study? And I'm not going to know the answer. So how do you behaviorally change that? A pill might calm you down, but you have to do that. And so it's a lot of little steps, and I don't think we're talking about that, but it's steps that everybody can do. It's about shifting what you're doing instead of working harder, working smarter. And you just have to have that belief and hope in yourself, in the provider you're aligning with. You have to have a trusted relationship. You can't come in and be like, Sinclair, you said this, that, and that. And you're like, we just started 2 days ago. Psychology of behavioral change is, you can't unlearn a behavior in less than 10 days. I put it on a 30-day trajectory because all my kids have learning and processing issues. So they need at least 3 times that. But that's a minimum, and that's with daily reinforcement. So I really want people to say, I'm going to intentfully spend 1 or 2 minutes a day, put it on your phone and say, this is my visualizing time. If everybody knows, you can touch on your iPhone, you can change your alarm. And, set at a time where you're going to be able to do it and write visualizing time. And I want you to visualize that change. When people come to me and say, this better work, I say, oh, no, you're going to say to me, I look forward to being less anxious. I look forward to whatever it is. You have to set that intention. It's very powerful. Anyway, I can go on and on about it, but if there's one thing people could take away from that, it is that belief, hope, and setting a real positive visual intention.
It's so important because we neglect the power of our subconscious. We need to remember that our bodies are always listening. So let's be on the same side as our body.
Our brain is always listening. If you tell it bad stuff, it's going to believe it.
Absolutely. So you touched on something that I really want to explore further with you, and that's the elements of a calm brain. I want to talk through with you, how can we actually walk a super stressed out, overinflamed brain of a child into a deeper state of healing that can self-maintain?
Yeah.
And then also make sure we have time to talk about maybe any obstacles that might be in the way of that.
Yeah. So first of all, psychoimmunology tells us that no healing is possible with a stress-activated nervous system. Okay? If you are walking around stress hijacked, I don't care what doctor you're going to, I don't care what you're doing, your body is not going to let you heal, period, or at a minimum at an optimal level. Okay? So you can't jack yourself up on stress, good or bad, and think it's not going to affect you, because it's gonna. That's just the way it is. So accept it and plan for it, counter it. Just like you brush your teeth or an exercise every day, you need to put this in your schedule in as little as 10 minutes. So how can you do that? When we calm our nervous system and you're dealing with chronic disease, whether that's anxiety or infectious disease, whatever's going on, your body's resources try to divert its energies to whatever this unknown stressor is. So when we calm, what it's going to do, your body's going to be able to go and do its work. So how can we do that? How can we do it for ourselves as a parent? How can we do it for our kids? So number one, you got to get yourself in order. Okay. I talk about sharing the calm. And when we are stress activated, even if you think about somebody you know is very anxious and it's palatable, you can see it, you can feel it. You don't realize how much your body language gives off. It's quite unbelievable how much it tells. Doing these things for yourself is mandatory, not just for your child. So 10 minutes a day, what can you do? So free, you could do breath work, okay? And that's diaphragmatic belly breathing. I like a 4-7-8, breathe in for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. Number one. You can do somatic strategies. I like to do a heart hug. So you're putting your hand over your heart and then your other hand over here and then doing and cooling down. There's a bunch of strategies. You can do meditation. Then you can go up the food chain and you can do things like biofeedback. You can do neurofeedback. You can do PEMF. You can take supplements to help regulate your nervous system. It still doesn't negate some of the physical things you need to do, like breath work. You can't just take an anxiety lowering supplement and still be breathing out of your chest. It's not going to make you feel as good as it is. Like, breath is really important, everybody. I make my kids, like, they know how to do it. It's so important. And, this is a cardio exercise. I love my cardio. You still have to do that. I light candles and do prayer and gratitude every morning. It's a really special time for me. I set an intention. I have all different ones. We crack up. My husband says it looks like I'm practicing Santeria at home. But, sometimes I text my friends and say, I lit my special candle for you, and it's just such a wonderful thing. It makes me feel good. My kids practice in it. They go, oh, can you help me? Can I help you blow out the candles? Because I say things like, I look forward. My youngest got diagnosed with scoliosis because he has a low tone. So we have a balance candle. We always say it's a balanced chakra candle. And we always say, I look forward to my straight spine. So they can't believe in 8 weeks he lost one of his curves. And I said, you don't know John Carlo Hodge, okay? He made it happen, right? So he set the intention and he did the work. Those curves don't even have a chance, right? 8 weeks, he had a double curve. He lost one. They don't even know what to make of it, okay? So that's the power of that mind. And he goes there and he helps light the candle. And he says, I look forward to a straight spine. But he also doesn't make it just wish. He puts some action around it. It's just a lot easier when you see that and you set that intention. But we have to calm the nervous system. And when you are feeling very anxious, I know people say, I can't breathe. I can't do this. I can't do that. I promise you, maybe it's a walking meditation. What meditation doesn't have to be sitting there and quiet. It's mindfulness-based activities. There is a form you can do. And the research says it's a minimum of 10 minutes, but it can be as little as 10 minutes, but it's cumulative. We don't get to just go for a massage once a week and all of a sudden you're going to feel better. So that's super, super important to be able to do that. And again, without calming the nervous system, this is a barrier to improving. Whenever people come to me and they've gone to, my world record is I had somebody who went to 55 doctors. But on average, people go to a dozen or more doctors before they come to me, and then they get better quicker than their experiences. And again, I don't got a magic wand. You come here, you're going to work, right? It's just that we're using the science in the right order at the right time. And we teach people, we calm the nervous system. That is what we do. And that's why people are able to get better spiritually, emotionally, physically. right? There's got to be an alignment. And I love that people walk away and make lifestyle changes. As icky as these things are, right? When bad stuff happens, what are you going to gain from this? What is going to be your positive? Nobody wants to think about that when you're in the middle of it. But I promise you, when you get to the other side of it and you're not so hijacked yourself, you're going to be like, wow. You know what I mean? Like when my kid was as sick could be, I was forced to homeschool him. I would have never homeschooled my kid. It's become a blessing for my older kid. And even in our lives, it allowed us to travel all the time. There were other things that sort of came from it that you don't expect. You have to say thank you. And I don't like this. What is my mission? What is my, that's a bigger part of all this. But calming the nervous system and making sure you have the biggest barriers are that stress activation, not having belief and hope, and really visualizing yourself getting better. Don't let the negative ruminations get in there. Boy, you have to say, I'm not doing that. I'm going to do this. Tell your brain exactly what you want. Don't let it tell you what's not going to happen, because the negative will happen if you tell it. And then detoxification. I feel like detoxification is one of the biggest barriers for everything from hormone difficulties to certainly mental health, anxiety, depression, and infectious disease. And we're just have so many toxins in our environment. Even if you don't have a weak liver, like I have a weak liver, I have birthmarks on my liver, I have hemangiomas on my liver. And even if you don't have those things, you need intentful practice around detoxification to have a better brain, to live longer and live better.
So let's talk about, I think that you've hit on some really important points about not only the root causes of why our kids are not well today, this toxin overload, the stress overload, and then in come the infectious, the fun infections, like yes, Lyme co-infections, but it's so much bigger than that, as you mentioned. And then we talked a little bit about the first step being calming the brain and really allowing that space and respecting the nervous system. And I'm so glad you emphasized about the parents as well, because as parents, as caregivers, holding the container for the kid to heal, you have to take care of yourself. You have to. It doesn't feel right because you're only as happy as your sickest child, but really get to support and respect the needs of the caregiver support and nervous system as well. So I know that one of your subspecialties is talking about the obstacles to healing from chronic illness, and I really want to spend some time unpacking that with you.
Yeah, I think my number one obstacle for getting better is that stress activation. I happen to live in the Northeast, and Lyme disease was named for Lyme, Connecticut, the state I live in. And so some of the top Lyme tick-borne doctors, they are all in this Northeast region. They've expanded, but some of the original ones, right? And even my child, he went to see a famous Dr. Charles Ray Jones at the time when I went to go to see him. He'd already seen 25,000 children. He just passed away this year. He was practicing until he was 92. And when you would sit in the waiting room, everybody, it's like me, they fly in, they come in, and they're going to these wonderful providers. But a conversation that was not happening was, my kid is agitated. My kid is this. And we put so much effort into the antimicrobial, the viruses, helping to mitigate mold exposure, which is a conversation I'm gratefully that people are having more and more about. But nobody talked about how to calm that nervous system down and why, and that's where I bring in that psychoimmunology. So when I see people not getting better, besides the belief and hope and the detoxification, obviously my specialty is getting the nervous system regulated. And again, we don't have to make it as hard. Some of my people have to do neurofeedback, and that's much more time intensive and expensive. But let's start with breath. Let's start with meditation. Let's start with prayer, if that aligns with you, or whatever it is, positive affirmations. And that is something that I wish everybody would start with today, because again, there's no barriers to that. Look up, You can look up 4-7-8 breath, right? You can look up belly breathing. And a child of every age can do this, or somebody in their 90s. There's no age limit to teaching diaphragmatic breathing. And it is the quickest way to regulate your nervous system. But again, you've got to do this multiple times in a day. If you're stress activated, we have to walk you down from that sympathetic stress state down into the relaxed parasympathetic, I call it the hot tub state. So we got to get you down there. Everybody wants to be in a hot tub state, and that's to help you understand what it feels like,
Well, you'll never forget that.
You won't forget it.
You feel like you're in a hot tub yet?
And again, it unlocks the body's healing potential, right? So if your resources are going, your body will ignore a known antigen of Bartonella or Babesia, and it will try to figure out why it's stress hyperactivated. And you will not have resources to fight that. It's always just shocking to me. And what happened to me is, I've been doing this stuff for so long, is I would have people do these things and then their physical symptoms would improve. And, then I'm such a research nerd. And then I really started to research and got, really knowledgeable about psychoimmunology. And it's quite fascinating. We know this. I mean, people can, there's studies about people curing their own cancer with meditation. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is the possibilities of what is there in the brain. And again, you have to be like, wow, I'm looking forward to this change. I believe this is going to happen. I can't wait for it. And those simple things. And I always tell everybody the same story. Would a batter go up to bat on the New York Yankees and say, I'm going to really suck here. I'm not going to hit this out of the park. No, they're like, I'm going to hit this out of the park. So why aren't we saying that to ourselves? And, it's really interesting in my brain map, Sinclair. It's almost rare that I don't see a ruminator. You could tell when people are ruminating. It's really a pattern that is easy to develop when we say negative things in our own head, and we do role model that either in our words, in our facial expressions, our body language to our kids. That's why it's so important for us to take care of ourselves, which nobody ever wants to do when your kid's in crisis. But the more they see you doing it, it gives them the subconscious message that they need to do it for themselves too. And sometimes the journey is hard, but you just have to persist and it will actually happen. It's pretty cool. I know my older kid, I was like, wow, he's put on this earth to humble me and, make it hard. But Lyme hijacks the brain and he's a teenager. And I remember it was probably last year, at the end of last year, he said, hey, my back's been hurting me. And I said, do you think it has something to do with that you're at the computer and you're leaning forward? He was like, yeah. And I was like, mine is too. This is what I've been doing. And I make sure that I even just get on the treadmill to walk. And he was like, oh. And the next day, my husband, we have video cameras everywhere. He sends me a video and he goes, look at this. And I was like, what is this going to be? Right. Usually it's a cat's or something like that, and it's Max getting on the treadmill by himself with nobody asking. He gets on it every day now and he does it himself. And so when you start having these conversations, you don't make it arguments, you role model it and you make it really positive, and we're able to joke about it with him too. Like the treadmill broke not long after that. And we're like, the treadmill was in shock that you were on there, and Max will be like, and he laughs about it and stuff like that. But he was like, I need a new treadmill because I'm using it every day. We're like, okay, all righty. Set the intention, stay positive, and intentfully do the work to calm your nervous system down, and you will see results.
That's fantastic. Thank you for being such a ray of hope, Dr. Rao. I love that your central premise for your practice is that it's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay.
It's going to be a beacon of hope and clarity in a very muddy, scary world for parents.
Yeah, it is. And I've been there, and many parents have. 1 in 2 children in America have a physical or mental health problem. This is not a unique problem anymore. So we have to lean into what works and get off that darn worry train.
There you go. You're not alone. The solutions are out there, and you got so many resources now available to you. So where can people find you, Dr. Rao?
So they can find me at Dr. Roseann everywhere. So DROSEANN.com, on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook is Roseanne Kavanaugh Hodge, but you can find me drroseanne.com is probably the easiest place.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for being here with us today and spreading so much hope.
I'm glad to be there. And it all starts with hope. And everything after that will move in the direction that it should.
Thanks for listening. Go to detoxrejuvenation.com to find the links in the show notes to everything we covered in this episode. Please